Welcome back to Gentle Growth with Ivy. As always, this is Ivy, and today we have special guest Annalicia with us. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, my name is Annalicia. Um, sorry, I'm a little nervous.
You're fine.
I do prefer to be called Anna, so if you want to call me Anna, that's
Oh,
fine too.
absolutely.
Um, I am a single mom of three. Uh, so I've had a pretty rough life growing up and also with relationships, and that, that kind of leads me to the whole mental health thing. I actually suffered from a lot of trauma, a lot of
Mhm.
abuse.
So, what brought us together was I was looking for people to have on my podcast to discuss mental health, and you commented on your my post, and you mentioned that you used to victimize yourself due to your mental illnesses. And instead of doing that, you realized that it was more beneficial to tackle your dramas and to, not dramas, I'm so sorry, tackle your traumas. I'm nasally because I have a cold. Um, and so you tackled them, and now instead of being a victim, you're a survivor and you're going strong.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a work in progress.
Right? I am
Every day
too.
is always a work in progress. Um, but that is my main goal in life too. It's like, a lot of people are in competition with each other. It's like I'm only in
Hmm.
competition with myself, and I only want to be better than what I was yesterday. I want to be a better person than I was last year, or,
Hmm. Yes.
and there's going to be times too, or there's been a lot of times where I have, slipped up and my behavior kind of, I just would react reactionally because of a trigger.
Hmm.
And, but at the same time, like that takes a lot of self awareness. And, you just got to realize how you're acting. And then tomorrow you can fix that. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Hmm.
And
Oh,
always,
yeah.
always take accountability.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Always take accountability.
Absolutely. Accountability and you said like self-awareness. That is really, really huge because I know I too used to victimize myself. I was absolutely convinced that these mental disorders, these mental illnesses, the conditions, I I allowed that label to kind of define me. And
Hmm.
so I'm sad because I have depression. I'm constantly anxious because I have anxiety. I can't control myself because I have ADHD. I'm impulsive. It's just who I am. Um, and I really allowed the mental health conditions to just define me, and I was a victim to them, and they controlled me. But it really is powerful whenever you realize, like, okay, this behavior isn't entirely healthy. It's not good for me. It's not good for those around me, and maybe it's time to own up to that and try to make those steps to better ourselves.
When I was introducing myself, I didn't mention this earlier, but I do have my own podcast, and I actually spoke about that on my own podcast. And um, what actually led me to want to be better was, one day, like I was actually taking the 2 weeks off from COVID, right?
Hmm.
And during that 2 weeks, I was absolutely bored. I had nothing to do, and then all I was doing was just thinking about everything wrong in my life, all the negative
Hmm.
things. And I was so depressed. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to eat. And then I started thinking, like, I am miserable. I
Hmm.
really hate my life. I hate my life. I want to be better. I want to do different. And then I started thinking, like, okay, so what can I do to be better, right?
Right.
I was lying there, and then that's when I was self-reflecting. So I was like,
Hmm.
okay, started asking myself some questions like, what am I feeling? Okay, so this is what I'm feeling. Why am I feeling like this? What
Hmm.
caused this emotion? And then I started asking, when was the first time that I started feeling this way and what happened?
That's a big one right there.
Yeah, it
That's big.
really was. And then so that's, I've learned to really self-reflect a lot on, what's going on, and that's again goes with self-awareness. You have to be self-aware of your behaviors
Mhm.
because, to be honest, like, even though your feelings are valid, yes,
Mhm.
your traumas are valid, yes, it's happened to you, but at the same time, you cannot use that as an excuse to justify your behavior.
Mhm.
You can't use that. You have to hold yourself accountable, because even though I've learned to self-reflect and I've learned to recognize, what's going on, it still didn't help much. I was still reacting, and I was still
Mhm.
like, well, I do this because this happened. I do this because that happened, because my ex hit me and this and that. And like, that was me victimizing myself. And I would self-sabotage a lot of my relationships when I was trying to date, because I've been pretty much single for 10 years. So when I was dating, I would self-sabotage a lot. There was one time where I was scrolling through Facebook, and there was a post that I seen that says how people victimize and gaslight themselves.
Yes.
So I'm scrolling through it and I'm reading them and I'm like agreeing with this, like, but that's what I am. I am a
Mhm.
victim. I didn't choose to live this life. I didn't tell them to hit me. I didn't, you know what I mean? I didn't ask for this.
Right.
And and then I said, I am a victim and I am going to continue to be a victim until I no longer let it control me.
It's important to note that we are all victims at a point.
Hmm.
Um, and we do go through pain, and we have to feel that pain. If we went through something traumatic, that's traumatic, and our body's going to react, and so are we. It hurts, and you got to let it out. You got to lash out. You got to cry. You got to stay in bed. You got to do that stuff. But there also has to be a point in time when you realize that you're no longer the victim, and it's time to be the survivor.
Hmm.
And it's time to start making changes and to discover tools and learn so that you can change those behaviors, because not only are you hurting those around you, but you're truly hurting yourself by keeping that victim mentality, because like you said, you hated your life, you were not happy. And what's the point of living if you're not truly living? you
Yeah.
know you have to find the purpose in your life, and you have to let that motivate you to keep pushing, because no matter what you have been through in life, you deserve happiness. No matter what experiences you had at a young age, middle age, end of age, all of that, you deserve happiness, and you deserve peace. You deserve clarity. You deserve to live your best life, no matter what has come into your life. And it's important for people to have those turning points and go, okay, this is enough. It's time to change. And it sounds like that's what happened to you.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think too, like, this really needs to be an awareness, because
Hmm.
there are so many people who don't understand what others have gone through. It's like everybody experienced trauma, right?
Hmm.
It's just they experience it differently. Everybody has a different coping mechanism. And it's important to surround yourself around people who are going to be patient and understanding with you.
Hmm.
Because like with me too, like there are times where, you know, I think I'm healed. I'm fine. Nothing bothers me anymore. But that's only because I isolate myself sometimes.
Hmm.
That's because I refuse to put myself in that situation. So, like, especially when it comes to relationships, um, just the thought of a relationship triggers me just because of the traumas that I've experienced.
Hmm.
So there are going to be times, where I'm going to, where I have behaved or become toxic, right? Because
Right.
that was my norm for so long. And a lot of times I don't realize that I'm still being triggered, that I'm still reacting from the trigger. And it's important to have somebody there who's going to be patient and honest with you and say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you know, this is how you're acting right now, and this is how it's affecting me,
Mm-hmm.
and this is how it's affecting us and our relationship. And, again, that's where accountability comes in. Like, you can't argue with that. It's like, okay, you have to realize I am acting this way because it doesn't make me feel good. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm anxious, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so, and because I've also been with people who are, oh, you're just acting out, you're just acting irrationally, you're just whatever, you need to chill and this and that. And that doesn't help.
No,
It doesn't help at all.
they
When
might be
you
a little right in some ways, but it's not helpful.
have, no, yeah, that's what it's like. If you have someone there that is able to open your eyes and say, hey, this is how you're behaving and
Mm-hmm.
it needs to be corrected. And that's when you need to do the work to correct yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Start reflecting on that.
Yeah, that's your normal. So, like, everybody has their own normal. No matter how toxic or unhealthy their normal is, that is still their normal. And so they
Hmm.
don't understand that it might have an impact on somebody else. And if you're acting in those ways and then somebody else is also being triggered, and then they're acting in a unhealthy way as well, and then it's just an entire unhealthy relationship. So if you are lucky enough or blessed enough to have somebody in your life who can see your unhealthy habits and come to you in a supportive way and say, hey, you did this, and this is how it made me feel. Let's work on that. Then listen and take accountability for your actions, because I've said it before, all feelings are valid. If
Hmm.
you are feeling a feeling, it is valid. Now, the way that you express it may be unhealthy, but if you are feeling something, if it's bothering you, you need to talk about it.
Right.
And if somebody comes to you and wants to work on it and they come to you in a supportive manner, that's whenever you're like, okay, you know, let's work on this together. Um, and you might have to reach out to a professional support person, or you can work directly with that person and say, you might be able to say, that wasn't my intention. I did not want to make you feel that way, but I understand that I did. And I apologize about that. What can I do differently in the future? Because I know, since I've learned how to kind of stop my people pleasing and how to set boundaries and how to explain to people, hey, you're making me feel this way. There's so many times that I've gotten, well, that wasn't my intention. Well, I'm not sorry. That's not what I meant. And
Yeah.
I think it's so silly, because even though it wasn't your intention to hurt somebody, it doesn't take away from the hurt that they feel. They are still feeling hurt. And if you love that person, you care about that person, then, I think we should be able to change our behaviors to support their feelings, as long as it's not, entirely irrational. If somebody says they don't like the way you breathe while you eat your mac and cheese because it makes them feel gross, then, that's a them problem, not a you problem.
Right.
um, but that's like one of the biggest struggles that I've discovered on my healing journey and with setting boundaries, is people saying, well, that wasn't my intention. And so I love coming up with analogies, because it really helps me understand things better, and it seems to help other people as well. And my analogy with that is, say you're cooking your most famous recipe that you cook all the time, you nail it every single time, it's perfect. You
Hmm.
serve it and somebody gets sick from your food. Are you going to say, well, too bad, I had no intention of making you sick? Or are you going to say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that my food made you sick?
Yeah, you're gonna
So
feel very remorseful.
exactly. And I also heard an analogy, if you accidentally run over somebody's foot, you still say sorry. You didn't intend
Mhm.
to run over their foot, but you still hurt them. So you still apologize. And maybe
Yes,
next time somebody's around your car, you're going to be a little bit more careful when you're backing up, you know? So
yes.
it's important to know that feelings are valid. They are valid.
They are very much valid, but as you said, you know, it's the reaction,
Hmm.
it's how you react to those feelings that really matter.
So, what are some of like the tools that you have found to help you with like your self awareness, and then maybe some tools that you have been able to implement whenever you feel yourself getting triggered?
That's a good question.
That's
I actually just recognize, how I'm feeling at the moment, like,
mm-hmm,
like, and I realize, like, okay, I am reacting out of anger, or, you know, I'm projecting, right?
mm-hmm,
And I kind of just step back for a moment, and, like, if I'm interacting, talking to someone, I would say, I'm sorry. I need to think about this for a minute because I know that I'm acting out of emotions.
mm-hmm,
Um, so I think about what caused me to react,
mm-hmm,
and what can I do better to change that. What is a better way to react, or how can I communicate what I'm feeling? How can I let this person know or how they made me feel, or
mm-hmm,
like I just try to learn how to communicate better. I
mm-hmm.
still have a lot of work when it comes to communication, I admit. Um, but
We're all a work in progress.
most of the time, I just try to take a step back,
Yep.
and I just reflect. I do isolate myself a lot, and I just think about everything, and I research a lot,
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out better ways to cope.
If I had to put a word to that, I feel like I would say that's like mindfulness. We're like programmed our entire life.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden we're like, oh my goodness, these programs are malfunctioning. They are no longer serving me well. And now it's time to unprogram them. We got to delete
Hmm.
them. And we need to do some research to find out some better installments that we can add in here. And it might take you a minute, with your isolation, take you some time to sit back and think. And I know isolation can be frowned upon at times. People are like, oh, you shouldn't isolate yourself and whatnot. But honestly, I think I did a lot of my healing in isolation
Hmm.
because it was such a time for self reflection and researching and practicing, and just it's hard to heal when you're constantly interacting with other people constantly. I know, as me with somebody with like ADHD, I often feel that I must have to put on like a mask whenever
Hmm.
I'm interacting with other people, and it's really really hard to stay true to myself and to help heal myself when I constantly have this mask on, because it's not easy to put on and take off, and it takes
Yeah.
a lot of work. And it's not just a simple, okay, I leave this place, let me get back to my healing. It's no, I got to leave this place, I got to drive home, I have to center myself again, then I have to get home, I have to unlock everything that I just went through, and then I get to work on myself again. And so when you've been hurt for so long and just constantly getting hurt and hurting yourself as well, not understanding that you're hurt. And so you're suppressing emotions and putting things off. And the wound, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And sometimes you just need to rest. And you
Yeah.
can't rest when you're surrounded by people, especially, with the world that we live in today. We are surrounded by broken people
Yeah.
who share that brokenness with us. And so many of us, I know I do, I hold on to that. Like if somebody tells me something horrific, like it sticks with me and it'll replay in
Oh
my
yeah.
head. And it's like I feel their pain. Um, and it's hard to work through your pain while you're also feeling other people's pain, or whenever you're trying to help them through theirs as well. Because I know for me, I hurt for a long time, and for the longest time, I was helping other people before I was helping myself.
Mhm.
So I was like pushing my wounds and my self as a priority. I was pushing that down. Like, no, you wait. Let's go help these people first. And I did no healing. And like, I could have done so much more, like, better for myself and for those around me if I would have focused on myself first.
Yes.
But, it's okay. We all make our mistakes. It's the important part is realizing, okay, this is not okay. This needs some improvement.
Mhm.
And you can do that without being hard on yourself too. Because I know at first I was incredibly hard on myself. Like, wow, how could you allow that for so long? How did you not understand that? How did, and I would beat myself up. And you got to learn. I know forgiveness is always a huge thing, but you got to learn how to forgive yourself as well, not just others.
Right.
And so that's a big thing, is just learning and forgiving yourself and just slowly healing. It's definitely not a quick thing that happens overnight, and it takes work.
Yeah, it's a daily constant thing to
Mhm.
work on. And, like you said, like just being, interacting with people all the time, like to me, that's a distraction. And that's why
Mhm.
I isolate myself. Um, because a lot of times when I did used to, just go out and hang out with friends and, you know, just so I can get over it,
Mhm.
it was a huge distraction. And it was actually a way, it was an escape, you
Mhm.
know? And the thing is, that didn't make me feel too good either because a lot of times I would end up drinking,
Mhm.
or there was always, other things involved, drugs or being surrounded around people that you really don't relate to.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I like to isolate myself too, because I used to escape a lot,
Yeah.
and, escaping doesn't help at all.
No. I feel like escaping is kind of pushed down our throats too, because I mean, I know there's age limits on alcohol, and there's age limits on, certain like legal recreational drugs and stuff. But it's like everywhere. You see it on the TVs, you see it on the movies. When you're sad, you go drink. When you're depressed, you go do drugs. And I'm not someone who's going to hate on drinkers or people who do drugs or anything of that. It's a wound,
Right.
and it's unfortunately, medicine like that is a lot more affordable than other medicines or therapies, or maybe it's just the only thing that you know. It's readily available. It's right there. You go to a party and everybody's got it.
Yeah.
It's right there and it works. You take it, you detach, you feel numb, literally. I haven't drank in years, but I know whenever I did, you literally felt numb and almost
Hmm.
floaty, and it's amazing. Um, but it's temporary,
Right. You get
i-
home and you feel the same exact way you did before you left.
if not worse.
Yeah.
If not worse, because I mean, like I said, I'm not a drinker now, and I've had a cold, and so I've been taking like cough syrup before bed to help myself sleep through the night. And I'm a lightweight now, so that little bit, I'm like, whoa. I know
Yeah.
that's so silly, but like I feel it, And then even like this morning, I know I told you I was running late to this podcast. Like my life has been hectic. And I'm not going to say that my cough syrup before bed, completely ruined my morning or whatever, but it gives you that like disconnect.
Yeah.
Um, and it's whenever you need to do your healing work, you got to be connected to yourself. And
Yes.
if you're
And
constantly disconnected, like you're not going to get anything done.
yeah, for sure. And like you said, you got to put yourself first. And that was one of the biggest things too that I learned was to put myself first, put my needs and my wants first.
Hmm.
You know, being a single mom for
That's
so
hard.
long, I, I put my children before anything,
Hmm.
but I did always put myself in the back burner. And
Hmm.
I'm also one of those type of people that I love taking care of others.
Yes.
That is a passion of mine. And but I always put other people's needs before my own. I
Hmm.
always wanted to make sure that other people were happy before my own. And I've started to learn self-care. I've learned that, I started going on trips. Like it's
Oh,
okay for me to go to trips on my own because I sometimes need to get away. I need
yeah.
to, you know, clear my mind and, just kind of refresh.
Yes.
Um, yeah, self-care is very, very important. Putting
It
yourself is
is.
very important because, to be honest, you can't be the parent that you want to be or
Hmm.
the friend that you want to be and take care of others if you're not taking care of yourself.
Mm-mm. Nope.
That's only going to bring other people down because you're
Hmm.
not in a position to be able to help.
No, I absolutely agree. Whenever I was in high school, I took an STNA course, and I think one of the most valuable things that my teacher taught me, she was a life coach as well as a teacher, and I had her for my last 2 years of high school. Um, I was training to be an STNA, which is a state tested nurse aide.
Hmm.
And she told us that we always make sure that we take care of ourselves before we show up to our job, because we have to take care of ourselves before we take care of others. She said that sick people cannot take care of sick people. So
Hmm.
you have to come to work all together and cared for. Don't come with your needs unmet, or else you're not going to be able to meet other people's needs as well. And that is the same for your children.
Hmm.
And that it took me a minute to realize that. My kid's only like 2.5. Um, and her first year was a really, really big struggle for me, because I was a chronic people pleaser. Absolutely. It was really, really unhealthy. My happiness came from other people. Um,
Yeah.
and disappointing someone was like the end of my world. I mean, it would send me into a panic attack if I knew that somebody was angry with me, and that's not an exaggeration. I would be physically sick if somebody was angry with me. And so whenever I had my baby, that was even harder because, babies cry. It's what they do.
Yeah.
But as a mom, I felt like I needed to fix that cry that very minute. And because of that, I wasn't taking care of myself. I went days without showering. I went days without even brushing my teeth. There were so many times where I forgot to even eat meals. Uh, my laundry wasn't getting done. My house wasn't really getting taken care of, except for like in her areas. And, it is important to take care of your kids, you know, but I was so worn down. I was not giving my best self. So, as sad as it is, I mean, that whole first year of my daughter's life, she wasn't getting the best version of her mother. And that is such an important time.
Hmm.
Um, so it's important to set time for yourself and make sure that your needs are being met so that people are, and don't just do it for other people. Like, don't just be the best version of yourself so that you can give the best version of yourself to other people, but understand that constantly giving yourself to other people isn't doing them any good if you're not taking care of yourself too.
Right. Exactly.
Hmm.
And I've also learned too, like, you know, you did mention that it would make you feel sick when someone was upset with you.
Yeah.
And I feel that 100% because
Hmm.
I'm the exact same way. And I still have trouble like with that. I struggle with
Hmm.
it a lot. And but one of the things too that I've learned to do was, you know, or I practice doing is stop stressing over things that are out of my control.
Oh, yes, that's huge.
Um, you know, you can only control so much in your life. You can't control other people.
Oh.
You can't control how other people are feeling towards you or anything
Hmm.
like that. Like, you know, if someone does feel some type of way about you, that's actually their problem,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
You can't let that affect you. You know, only control what's within your control.
Hmm.
You know, other than that, because you're just gonna keep dwelling on it and you're gonna put yourself back into this depressed, anxious state. Yeah, that's my main thing. Is just
Yeah.
control what's within your control.
And something to add to that is a lot of people, I know we talked about, um, if people say that they made us feel a certain way, then we could adjust our behaviors to, help support them. But there's also people out there who have triggers as well.
Hmm.
And they could be triggered by something that's not unhealthy or toxic. There's people who are triggered by hugs from family members. You can't control other people and how they feel and their reactions, because
Right,
even if you do all the right things, if you're doing everything the way it's supposed to be done, you could still trigger somebody without knowing it, and they could still have a reaction. And that's something that they have to process and they have to go through. No amount of you apologizing or changing your behavior is going to help with their healing.
right, right. And I think it's important for that other person too to also communicate what that trigger was because
Hmm.
I've dealt with people where I've triggered them and it just led to a huge argument rather than
Hmm.
them communicating that to me and saying, "Hey, you did this and that really triggered me." And so I'm stuck and anxious because it's like, what did I do wrong? I don't think I did anything wrong.
Yeah,
I did everything right and they're not telling you. So that
that's hard.
it's important for everyone to learn how to communicate what they feel. And I know that's really hard for like men as well because, especially when it comes to stuff like that,
Hmm.
it's it's a vulnerable thing to be able to talk about it and let someone know, you know. And I know
It
with
is.
men, especially when it comes to mental health, like they don't want to be weak or feel weak. They don't want to be vulnerable with people. They want to, you know, portray
Be the big
themselves
tough
as the
man.
strong man, right?
Yeah.
And it's actually like with men that I usually have the most trouble with. Like I trigger
I
them
agree.
so much. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I did.
Men, triggers, it's hard because a lot of people don't know exactly what a trigger is. And it's hard because it's different for everybody.
Yeah,
A trigger is something that makes you react in a certain way. It makes you feel a certain way. And so, I mean, and there's all kinds of triggers. There's happiness triggers, there's sadness triggers, there's angry triggers. There's so many different kinds of triggers. And so, whenever you have all those different things for so long, it's hard to say, oh, that's not a good trigger, or oh, that wasn't a good response. And so, it really takes somebody saying, or you seeing something. I know you mentioned seeing like a post or something. um,
yeah,
it takes the awareness, it takes the openness. That's why I really value like people like you who come onto my podcast who are willing to share their stories, because there's so many people out there who aren't aware. And so the more we share our stories and our experiences, the more awareness that we bring and the more healing that can come from that as well. And when it comes to men and mental health in general, it's such a negative stigma
Hmm.
of mental health being a weakness and us just, being crazy people and we're weak and we can't handle things. And as men are supposed to, be our providers, the strong men, and all this other stuff. And if mental health conditions make them weak, well, they can't have that because they can't be weak. But it's so important that we do embrace those things and we bring awareness to them and we spread facts and education about it, because it might make you feel weak in the moment, but you're not that way forever. You can get better. And it's okay. Like, even if you have something that maybe can't get better, there's a lot of examples. You can still find ways to be happy around it.
Yeah.
Um, and it's important to like embrace that, because if you don't, you're not going to be living a life worth living. And we all deserve a life worth living.
Reminded me what I was going to say. Um, so one thing that I don't know if you've noticed during this podcast, but one of the things that my traumas has caused me was um, I lose my train of thought a lot. I can be in the middle of a sentence
Mm-hmm.
and completely forget everything that I was talking about, what I was going to say, what my
Mm-hmm.
point was, and I'm just like, oh, uh, and I don't know if it's like I really don't know what caused that.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I really need to learn. It's like,
I blame it on my ADHD, if that helps.
yeah, I don't know.
My brain, it's like I have all these ideas just like going constantly.
Mhm.
And whenever I talk, I just pick from them randomly. And so I go from like topic to topic in like the same sentence. And then I catch myself and I'm like, oh, I need to stop. Okay, you talk now.
Yeah, I think I might have ADHD. I do the same thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
there's
I
a
mean,
lot of times
there
where
could
I
be
have
other
to,
things.
oh yeah, like, but there's like a lot of times where I have to write down
Mm,
everything that I'm going to say or
yeah.
that I want to say, and I just read it. Because
That's,
otherwise
yeah.
I will lose my train of thought.
Yep, that's exactly. Even though I use like the same outline pretty much for all my podcasts here about the things I want to discuss, I still have it like in front of me. Otherwise, I'll just get off track and just it can be a mess sometimes. But I enjoy it though. Like, even though it's a mess, it's still like educational. So
Yeah.
that's all that matters to me. We're sharing experience and advice and facts and all that good stuff.
I just really hope though that, I get to help other people with my
Hmm.
experience and what I've learned. And I don't go to counseling or like I don't see a therapist or anything like that. I want to,
Hmm.
but it's so expensive.
It is.
And so these are just things that I've had to learn by myself,
Hmm.
and it took a lot of research and a lot of trying to like I would literally ask like my friends or
Hmm.
you know like if I am dating someone I would literally ask them like what is your experience with me, you
Yeah.
know
That's a
how
good, healthy question.
like how am I acting, like how do you feel and what do you think about me, like how do I make you feel, like I
Yeah.
want to know these things.
Good
I
for
like to
you.
see from other people's perspectives,
Hmm.
and that way I can get a better view of myself
That's good.
because I could only see from the inside. I can't see from the outside. So
Yes.
I do like to, know what everybody else is seeing and
Hmm.
experiencing from me.
I think that's incredibly like, I mean, that's vulnerable for you to do, but that's like incredibly like progressive for you to do as well. on like an early part of like your healing journey, and like you said, you didn't have a counselor or a therapist or anything. So like that's a really big step to ask somebody, how am I making you feel? Because anybody listening to this, they can think like, when was the last time I asked somebody, how am I making you feel? Because I'm trying to think that right now, and I can't think of the last time I did that. And that is like such a good thing to do, and I'm going to make a mental note to start doing that because I really like that. That just blew me away for a minute. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, actually, it's honestly been a while since I've really asked someone that too.
That's so
Like,
good.
um, because there was actually someone recently we got into an argument, and my thing was like, what's wrong with me? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing that I'm trying to work on is stop trying to point out all the negatives about me.
Mm-hmm.
That only, you know, that only makes everything worse.
Yes.
But that's all I was saying was like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? But instead, like I should probably ask them, what are you experiencing
Mm-hmm.
from me? How am I making you feel? And I really should ask that.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
and
powerful.
that's another thing too, is like, again, it's because it's my norm,
Mm-hmm.
I've been so used to the whole toxicity, and it that's one of those things that I didn't realize that I was behaving
Mm-hmm.
until now.
Yeah.
So
Hey, it
that's,
happens.
yeah, that's,
And I think
oh,
something important to know is you are making so much improvement, like on your own. You said you haven't seen a
yeah,
counselor or a therapist or anything besides, close people. And that's important to note because there are people out there who don't have the resources to reach out to a professional, and they might consider themselves doomed. Like, how can I
yeah,
get past this if I can't get professional help? But there is other ways. You can, like you said, you can reach out to your friends, you can research online, you can self reflect, think, how am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? And like you said, when was the first time that I felt this way and what caused it?
yeah,
Because something that a lot of people don't know is, like I was saying before, the programs. Whenever we experience something for the first time, the way we react or the way people react around us is what helps form the framework of that program in us. And so
yeah,
the next time that experience or something like that happens, we're going to react in that same way. And we're going to continue that until we get told otherwise.
yeah,
And I also like how you said that, you don't really like to focus on the negatives. And that's good, because something that I've learned is what you focus on, you get more of. And I
hmm
know a lot of people call it, the law of attraction or manifesting, but it's so true because it's like if you're focusing on something, you're going to continue seeing that all around you.
But yeah, because there's so many times where I've looked in the mirror and I'm like telling myself, you're so ugly, you know,
Oh,
nobody wants you, nobody could love you, you're unworthy of it, are, you're so worthless, you're not enough,
that's
and those are
terrible.
things that, yeah, and like I'm still working on, on that, but I remember like I was sitting in my car looking in the mirror on my visor, and I was telling myself those things, and
Mm,
then I realized like I'm making myself feel terrible,
yeah.
like absolutely terrible. And I'm like, I really need to stop being so negative and pointing out all these negative things, because to be honest, like I it's like I'm the only person who sees these things, because people
Yeah.
who actually know me, they don't see that.
Yeah. I mean, you just said you'd look in the mirror and say you're ugly. I'm like, girl, I seen your picture.
Those were filtered. No.
No, but I mean, I can relate too, and it's something that helped me because I do see a therapist, and the thing that she would tell me often is, how would you say that to a friend? Or would you say that to a friend? If you knew
Oh,
your friend was having a hard time, what would you tell them? And if it's something different than what you would tell yourself, why? Why do you deserve less than them? Why do you deserve less love and less compassion than they do? You don't. But you deserve that same love that you give to everybody else.
yeah,
You deserve that. And
exactly.
that hit me because I really do. I really give so much kindness so freely to other people. It's like somebody has to really do me wrong
Hmm.
before I can get a bad taste for them in my mouth, you know?
Yeah,
And yet here I am taking care of myself every single day. I'm the only person that got me this far, you know, besides people bringing me up whenever I was a baby. But you know, like I do this. This is me every day. Like why am I not giving myself that same love, that same compassion? You deserve that. Just as much as you give it to everybody else, give it to yourself times 10.
yes,
And
yes.
that was powerful for me as well. That's another important thing too is people like we feel so alone in times like this,
Oh, yes.
and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid, I can't believe I forgot a word that I literally just said. But it happens, and you know it's okay, and other people do it too, and we're not
Yeah.
alone.
And I remembered. So you know how you're saying like we all deserve love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like for me too, like for the longest, I never believed that I deserved to be loved.
Oh.
Like I felt like, you know, I deserved to be hated or like there was so many times too, like I would ask myself, like, do I have a sign on my forehead that says hate me or hit me? Like, why does this always happen to me? And it stems from because, you know, a long time ago, you know, I was in this abusive relationship and somebody that, you know, supposed to protect me and be there for me all the time had told me like, well, I know how you are, so you probably said or did something to deserve it.
Mm. Yeah.
And that's what led me to believe that, you know, I deserve the abuse. I deserve the hate. I deserve that. It's like, but no, I don't.
No.
Everybody deserves love,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and like you
Mm.
said, like, and honestly, like that love does have to come from you first.
It
You know, it's
does.
going to be very hard for other people to love you the way you want them to if you can't love yourself
Yeah.
because you're not going to be, you're not projecting that.
Yep.
You know,
Everything's
you're,
a reflection.
yes,
Yep. And so if you want people to reflect love back to you, you have to show the love yourself.
yes.
Is there anything else you would like to talk about before we get off here? Because I know this could probably go on forever, but I don't want to take up all day.
um, it has gone.
Yeah. I
uh,
know. It's flown by. I mean, it's
it,
really,
it did.
yeah, it's quality stuff, though. I mean, this is things that people struggle with every single day. And like we just said, it can feel so lonely. And
Yeah,
it's so comforting to understand that you're not alone.
yeah, for
So
sure.
I
That's one thing that I want to tell everybody too. It's like
yeah.
you're not alone in this journey at all.
No.
Like I said, everybody experiences trauma differently and they cope
Hmm.
differently, but you're not alone.
No.
You're not alone. And, you know, I would love to be somebody to be there to help, you know, and
Yeah.
that's all I want to do is I want to help and I want to be able to make a difference in anybody's lives. So I'm always free for a message or even a phone call.
Awesome. I'll make sure to put I know you gave me your Instagram, so I'll make
Mhm.
sure to put that in the description of this podcast. That way
Yeah,
if anybody feels the need to reach out, they absolutely can. And I appreciate you being vulnerable enough too. That's something that's hard to come by. Be vulnerable enough to share your experience in hopes that it helps somebody else too. That's even better, you know? Letting
yeah,
that out in hopes that it inspires somebody else. Thank
yeah.
you.
It's very hard to be vulnerable, and for so
Yes.
long I've been so strong,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes your strength is within your weakness.
Yep. Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm learning from. I know whenever I first started this, I wanted to talk all about my healing, and I did not want to talk about my past whatsoever. I wanted to keep that hidden and tucked away.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm finding the power in my story, and I'm seeing the effects it has on people. And I already know that your story is going to have some effects as well. And so I appreciate you so much.
Yeah. I appreciate you having me.
Yes. All right. Well, I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.